Medieval Europe built weapons that still look strange, even now. They were not strange by accident. They were strange because they solved real problems. To medieval fighters, these were not curiosities. They were answers.
Once armor, cavalry, and formation warfare evolved, stranger tools began to make sense.
The ugliest weapons were often the least interested in prestige and the most interested in results.
If a weapon survived long enough to spread, it usually answered a battlefield need. Some looked like tools, some looked like accidents, and some looked terrifyingly specific. These were the weapons medieval Europe used when ordinary answers felt insufficient.
One of the strangest anti-cavalry weapons looked like a club that had learned bad manners. It could hit like a cudgel and still threaten with a point. Against charging cavalry, ugly practicality mattered more than elegance.
It was not refined, but it was made to hurt men who trusted speed and armor.
Part of its power came from how easy it was to issue and understand.
Some weapons looked less like art and more like tools war had stolen from necessity.
The military fork was no peasant joke. It was a serious weapon of reach and control.
A long fork could be terrifying simply because it held you away while still threatening what mattered.
Medieval war did not replace the spear. It experimented around it. Some strange weapons were designed not only to kill, but to control a body. This was a weapon of control, arrest, and forced distance. When killing was risky, capturing at range could become its own violence. The strangest medieval weapons often worked by denying movement before denying life.
Some weapons stopped pretending to cut and began specializing in concentrated violence.
The war pick threatened armor by focusing force into a very small problem.
The war pick looked specialized because it was specialized.
One spreed force. The other tried to make it count through concentration.
Medieval names could be dark jokes, and so could the weapons.
In crowded violence, ugly, blunt force often survives where finesse runs out of room. Some medieval weapons looked almost engineered to insult armor personally. The strangest heads often appeared when one shape was no longer enough.
It was not just a weapon, it was an argument against plate.
Medieval war often borrowed from labor and made the result crueler. Strange shapes often survived because they moved enemies before they wounded them.
Some strange weapons were born when tools had to become war too quickly.
Once remounted for war, the scythe became something far more dangerous than its origin.
Desperation sometimes produced weapons that looked crude, but still threatened space and flesh.
Some strange weapons were really just highly evolved solutions to plate armor.
The stranger the head,
the more specific the battlefield problem usually was.
Plate armor made many normal weapons feel less certain, so weird ones multiplied.
Medieval war repeatedly proved that crude can still be carefully effective.
Many of the oddest weapons made sense only once the battlefield became crowded and unclean.
To stop a rider, you often had to scare or break the ride.
Strange weapons often appear whenever cavalry becomes too important to ignore.
Reach alone is useful, but reach plus control is often worse.
The strangest weapons worked best when other weapons created the conditions for them.
A good arsenal does not care whether a weapon looks noble, only whether it solves something.
These designs emerged from wood, iron, and repeated battlefield memory. Weird weapons stop being weird once institutions begin buying them.
The hand tells the truth more honestly than the silhouette.
An enemy can fear a weapon partly because he does not fully trust what it can do.
Weapons become uncanny when the battlefield bends them away from familiar forms.
The sword often won admiration, but ugly weapons often won practical arguments.
Battlefield debris reveals what weapons were trusted enough to bring into risk.
Once a weapon shows wear, it stops being theory and becomes history.
Different regions built different nightmares for different problems.
Strange weapons often moved between guard duty, riot control, war, and self-preservation.
Once drilled, even a bizarre weapon starts to feel obvious.
A truly working weapon eventually becomes just another object of the campaign.
Strangeness is easy to see. Usefulness is harder and far more important.
Medieval Europe kept inventing weapons that broke familiar expectations, because familiar expectations kept getting men killed. Strange weapons can terrify because their purpose is not immediately legible until it is too late.
Many weird weapons first solve the same old problem. How do you keep danger away while still threatening it?
The harder armor became, the less normal weapons stayed. When time and money ran short, the strange could become the only possible answer. Some were built for arrest, intimidation, and control inside walls.
Because they make medieval war look less familiar, and therefore more honest.
Every strange weapon was built by a craftsman who believed the battlefield needed it.
And some fighter trusted it enough to put his life behind it.
They survived not because they looked terrifying, but because enough of them proved useful.
Medieval war kept inventing strange weapons because normal answers kept failing.